So you know what's crazy about this? I've been mumbling and tripping over my words for like the past 20 minutes, trying to figure out what I should say to kind of introduce all of this. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it, is that I should just forget about that. I feel like I'm so critical with what I say and how I say it and how things should be paired together, that the beauty of this type of video is that it shouldn't really have any of that. As much as this is pretty much akin to a podcast, I don't want to treat it like a podcast, but I don't want to title it as a podcast either. But it's definitely going to feel like one. This is for a lot of you that have been asking for the audio only style videos, the more podcasty format, basically something that has literally no visuals whatsoever. There may be some stuff on the screen, Twitter handle, etc., maybe some graphics here and there, but nothing insane. This is basically just something that you can put on within the background, something that you can fall asleep to, work to, drive to, commute with, anything. Really, whatever your heart desires. With that said, this is a test trial, and these only work with the recommendations or things that you would like for me to talk about. I could talk about anything that I feel like is worthwhile, but it's not really the point, is it? I kind of want to talk about things that you would be interested in hearing me talk about, the stuff that you find fascinating or would make for a pretty interesting conversation or discussion. Of course, I can only give so much if I know the thing that you want for me to talk about, or if I have something that is worthwhile or valuable. Also, the level of interest that these videos get most likely going to determine their frequency. If there's not much of an interest in these videos, a lot of people may not really care for it. I completely understand. And they may be a little bit more infrequent, maybe once a week, once a month, twice a month. I'm not entirely sure. In terms of that, I'm kind of playing it by ear. But for whatever reason, if this is something that a lot of you are interested in and just like to hear me ramble about certain things, they may be a little bit more frequent. So in that vein, leave a like and subscribe if you end up enjoying this. I would greatly appreciate it. And also leave a comment for something that you would like for me to talk about in the next episode, version, video, podcast, whatever I'm currently going with. I also would like to reiterate, I understand that I don't have the most likable personality. I don't think I have much of a personality within my videos, so this allows me to open up a little bit more, but don't expect anything super crazy. I still feel very formal with how I record videos and how I want to portray stuff, which is kind of more so akin to myself. I think the grand title or umbrella for everything is that I consider myself a rather boring person, so these videos may be rather boring for you. They're not going to have a ton of personality within them. And more so just like a calming conversation. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a talk. A lot of you's left a bunch of very interesting questions. Some that I definitely can talk about and some that I probably would struggle to find the right words for until I get a little bit more comfortable in this style or formula of videos or just audio in general. But I do have a long list that is anime, manga, games, life, more personal stuff about myself, just basically anything, which is really great. I want to thank you for that. So I guess starting this off, we'll stick within the shallow end, right? Anime and manga orientated. The first question of me asking, what would you like for me to talk about? Maybe some weekly reviews or touching on different series each week that hasn't yet merited an in-depth analysis. We'll talk about some series arcs that you're into rather than individual chapters. I'm going to broaden this a little bit and talk about a handful of more so newer series that I do plan to make specific videos on, but have not touched on whatsoever. Because there's always a lot of new stuff coming out in a ton of different magazines. Obviously, Weekly Shonen Jump is the most prominent one, but elsewhere is a little bit far and few between. So I think recently there was the Red Hood one or the Guild Hunters. I honestly do not remember the name, but that was super interesting. I felt like I was reading like a version of Little Red Riding Hood, like the manga equivalent for it. I do think it's kind of heavily inspired by it, obviously with its own twist and authenticity to it, but I found it could be rather interesting. I'm not too sure how much length that you could get out of it or how much more you could go into detail with it. Obviously adding more stuff to expand upon is a standard process within manga and writing, but I think it does have a pretty good reception and I'm interested to see where it goes with what it has now. I think it only has 3 chapters. The other one that I was more so a fan of was the martial arts one. Niru, I'm not too sure how you pronounce it. There was something about it that just felt super simple. I'm not too sure if a lot of you have read it. I think it only has also 3 chapters. And it just feels nice. It feels grounded, especially the artwork. I can't put my thumb on where I feel like I've seen the artwork or a series that is kind of similar to it. But that story just feels nice. It's nothing super crazy. It's heavily grounded in reality with this kind of overall focus and attention to martial arts and the love and appreciation for it. So I think it's a really good change of pace for Weekly Shonen Jump. I'm not too sure if it's going to be successful or if it's going to get cancelled. You never really know with stories like these, but with everything that Weekly Shonen Jump has now within its lineup, Neru is quite easily, I think, the first that feels, I don't want to say original or unique, but I guess normal, like a breath of fresh air, just a different change of pace, you know? I do think it will kind of pull in a very specific type of audience. Obviously, Weekly Shonen Jump is heavily known for its overpowered, supernatural-esque, quote-unquote, superpowered-esque characters that are very fantasy-driven, right? Neru, for now at least, is rather realistic, it's grounded, feels good, and it's just like a solid little piece of work so far. I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm trying to think of other series that are kind of newish. I think Dan is very underrated. I say that weirdly because it's kind of very popular, but Dan's really good. It's a really good read. It's really enjoyable. It's a fun time. If you are any sort of fan of Chainsaw Man, you will 100% love Dan. It has this very similar vibe or authenticity to it, which isn't surprising because that author of Dan used to be the assistant to Fujimoto, who I believe worked on both Fire Punch and the early stages of Chainsaw Man. So there is a lot of homage and respect paid towards Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch and just Fujimoto in general within Dan, and it's just chaos. It's just crazy. There's interesting ideas, and every chapter or every, I guess, event within it feels like super new, feels like refreshing, and you don't really know what to expect. And that's kind of a style of story that I really enjoy reading. There definitely is a beauty within rinse and repeat and formulaic work, but the stuff that catches you off guard, the stuff that consistently keeps you on your toes and second guessing yourself is also just as interesting. So I guess that comes down to personal opinion. In terms of arcs for different series, funny enough, I had this conversation the other day, but the Coalition arc within Kingdom, I think, is just an incredible read through and through. I think the Rumbling arc for Attack on Titan has some of the highest peaks that I've ever seen. Just, it's very impressive to see that arc kind of hang on to every sort of emotional thread or emotional connection or peak for months and months on end. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's specifically one moment within the Rumbling arc for Attack on Titan where all of these civilians are running towards a cliff and the Wall Titans are walking behind them trying to kill them, and they're like holding up this child within the air trying to save them. That was incredible. Of course, the arc falls apart weirdly at the end. Obviously, that's going to be up to your own interpretation, but there were some very massive peaks that hold itself and make that arc very memorable for myself. I think also the Cocular prison raid arc from Tokyo Ghoul Re is extremely impressive. I think the way Shibuya is handled and its kind of process of elimination, kind of knocking out these certain points, is beautifully done. I am personally a big fan of the Chimera Ant arc. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but I definitely really enjoy it. I think it's very beautifully handled as well. Kind of opened up the doors for Hunter x Hunter to change quite drastically. It was like a turning point for the story and its cast of characters and powers and the world itself. Like, this is the most kind of important arc within the story that changes absolutely everything. So there is definitely quite a lot of arcs out there. Obviously ones that I can't think of, but the one that kind of I always fall back onto is definitely Coalition from Kingdom. That arc is ridiculous. I don't know how the author managed to do that in early 2012, I believe, but my god, that was just suspenseful. I don't know how long I should spend on these questions, but moving on. Realism of modern manga industry, how today's manga correlates to real world issues. This is kind of a loaded question. There's a lot of ways that manga today correlates to real world issues. But then again, I think it comes down to more of a corporate sense of control and what they allow to be within their magazine. Because when you kind of phrase that question like that, it's like saying that nothing within the 70s, 80s, or 90s was a reflection of that time's society. There definitely was series that had that reflection. There definitely was popular series that used characters or real world influences to reflect their characters or the arcs or the emotions that these people were going through. through. So I think now it's a lot more prominent just because the industry is so creative. It's become a lot more global. There's a lot more eyes on it, and there's a lot more opportunity for authors to kind of have corporate freedom, if that makes sense. There will be specific magazine companies or specific corporate side of things that won't allow certain things to be said, which in a sense is obviously very restricting, but understandable if you know what you're getting into. If you're publishing to a certain age demographic, it's very difficult to write a super real or authentic story that focuses on deep, dark, depressing things when your age bracket is kind of older children or teenagers. But I do think the implementation of real world issues is becoming a lot more apparent, and the way it's utilized is either super creative, super thought-provoking, and just pays a lot of respect to it. I think it's a pretty big reason why Ino Asano, the author of PunPun, is considered a prodigy of this generation within Japan, I believe. His work is very touching. It's very personal. It's like a very tragic love letter to people that have experienced these things, which I feel the only way that he could write something like that is if he himself has experienced those things, and he's managed to capture it in the most authentic, heartbreaking, but realistic way possible. And these are issues that you wouldn't see shown in such an authentic type of way, a very hard-hitting and real type of way. His way with characters and words and emotions and how his art depicts it is just beautiful. So I think with the popularity, you'll see that increase and that focus on real world issues and that being played upon within today's manga, but also the more freedom aspect of corporate intention, how much of a control corporate has over their authors with what they can or can't say. I don't really know if that's like a suffice response to that question, because it's a very loaded question. You could kind of break it apart for a very long time, but I think that's the way I interpret it. Moving on, I could see you doing like a bedtime story segment because your voice is so soothing. Thank you. Not sure what the subject matter should be. Not only that, but I would also be interested to hear your thoughts on mindfulness. Maybe even do like a guided meditation if that's at all interesting to you. I'm not entirely sure what a bedtime story would even be. I guess that would come down to recommendation, like if you wanted me to read like segments from specific stories. I'm not entirely sure how that would work, to be honest. But I could definitely try it. So if you would like for me to like read certain things, not for the whole portion of this video, but maybe for a little bit, definitely let me know. In terms of mindfulness, this is also a very loaded question. To be entirely honest, I don't think I'm the right person to talk to about mindfulness. And the reason I say that is because I think the way I am, or the way I treat myself mentally and emotionally, is the complete opposite of mindfulness, or maybe just the meditation side of it. Being aware of one's senses and emotions is something that I tend to avoid. Oh, this is getting real very quickly, very deep. I'm not sure how I should put it into words. I think for meditation and mindfulness and just what that equals to in terms of meditation, if people can find comfort in that, then I'm happy for them. If they can find comfort in anything, I'm happy for them. You know, it's each to their own, really. So it feels kind of wrong or disrespectful for someone like myself that kind of doesn't feel all too often. I'm not the most emotional person. I'm very logical in a sense, and that in itself is very detrimental. It's kind of a big reason why growing up, a lot of people were kind of scared or wouldn't approach me or kind of thought I was just cold in general, is because I just always wore like a very blank expression. I wasn't very emotionally fueled by things. And that's not to say that I'm never happy or I'm never sad or this or that. I just would never really share it with people. I would never really show it all too often, which sounds really weird with the way I talk about specific things, because it doesn't mean I'm not passionate, because I'm very passionate about what I do and how I talk about things, and I feel emotions while reading these stories. It's just the way I show it, the attention that I give to it, probably a little bit different to a lot of others. So I know it's not the answer that you're looking for, but I'm not entirely sure. I could do like a guided meditation, like just following like a script that you could probably Google for guided meditation, which I'm more than open to trying for everyone, but I don't think the words that I would provide about mindfulness is something that people should follow. Take your own steps for it. If you're interested in mindfulness, Google it, learn about it, indulge within it the way you would with something you're interested in. Next question. I know this is pretty common, but it's discussion of works that really impacted you, stood out to you. Characters, their stories that maybe you connected with. Could be animated shows, movies, cartoons, comic books, manga. You just really naming off everything. Another thing that comes to mind is what are you looking forward to about your life? Wow, that just opened up very quickly. Could be stuff you're interested in, personal passions, career, personal interests, stories, works to be released from people you like. It is very broad and could get too personal. I mean, it kind of been pretty personal right now. The previous question was very personal, kind of. A little slight insert of who I am, the boring individual that I am, the scary person that people think I am, which is weird because I post cat pictures on Twitter, which is kind of the funniest contradiction about it. Works that really impacted me. There's a long list. Vinland Saga, definitely. Oyasumi PunPun, Flowers of Evil, Tokyo Ghoul, and Tokyo Ghoul Re. Honestly, probably anything by Ino Asano, who does Oyasumi PunPun. Oshimi Shuzo, A Trail of Blood. There's probably a lot of series that I just can't name off the top of my head. Monster, Berserk. There's just an endless amount of series that I think are so incredibly well done, but have also impacted me rather heavily. In terms of a character and their story, PunPun from Oyasumi PunPun, 100%. That is the most impactful because it's the one that I connect to the most, and it's just such a heartbreaking and tragic but beautifully depicted story. It's one that feels so incredibly real that people deal with every single day. So I think I'm just going to keep that first question specific to that. I know it's not the most interesting one, but it's the best example I can give. In terms of what I'm looking forward to for life, honestly, I kind of I don't really live by a motto, but I say I like to live by a motto, and that's no past, no future. Kind of very obnoxious and on the nose when you think about it, but I don't really like to dwell too far on the future. I like to live within the moment and make the most out of the work that I'm doing now and keeping my mind in a very specific place. If I think too much into the future, I think about the struggles that come with it, the worries, the concerns. Will I have this? Will I not have this? Will I be okay here? Will I not be okay? Just there's an endless amount of information that you just do not know that suddenly comes rushing in, so I tend to avoid it. And it's not that I disrespectfully avoid it. It's not that I pay it no mind or no attention whatsoever, but I like to move in a way that is more open to where I am currently and how that will set me up further later on, if that makes sense. It's not like I'm incapable of thinking about what's going to happen in the future or backup plans or this or that, etc. But more so just the hardships of that stuff I tend to avoid. In terms of the interesting stuff, that is stuff that I look forward to in the future. Just anything that is of interest to me. A lot of the times it's really just normal personal stuff. Could be like different movies or TV shows, usually just entertainment, to be honest. A lot of games that I'm super excited for because these are kind of the small things that I cherish that provide me with a lot of joy. Now that I think about it, it's very odd because you would probably ask this question for someone that kind of has like a quote unquote normal job or just works, a 9 to 5, maybe in an office, maybe they're doing labor. And while I've experienced different versions of those jobs growing up, this one allows the most complete creative freedom that I've ever had. It's one that I've worked so much harder for, 10 times, 100 times harder for. I sleep less, I work more than any other job that I've ever had. And for a lot of people, it may not seem like a quote unquote normal job. It may not seem like a job at all, but I've worked extremely hard to be where I am today. And I wouldn't be where I am today without the kind of sacrifices that I've made to be here. And of course, obviously, the beautiful individuals that are yourself that have allowed me to do this, that have enjoyed the content that I've created, that have supported me, that have shown the amazing love. If I compare my answers with someone that works a normal job, I think their answers would be like a house, marriage, a boat, I don't know, a lawnmower. I'm not a dog. I'm not entirely sure. I think there's a standard things. Yes, like sure, buy a house, buy a boat. So, I think they're normal things, right? For me, I want to cherish my enjoyments. So that's the things I look forward to. Because I'm relatively young, 24. I say that and I just kind of die a little bit inside because just getting older. Like I feel old, but at the same time, it's like a weird limbo period of like 24 is old, but then it's also not really old, but then it is also old. So it's like, I don't know if that answers your question. I'm extremely sorry, Dorian, and I hope that's how you pronounce that name. I don't know why you would pronounce it differently, but you never know. Hopefully that gives you some sort of insight. All right, moving on. Another PunPun question. I mentioned PunPun like twice and how I can't talk about it, and yet here I am talking about it. I appreciate the PunPun question. I'm gonna blast through a little bit because I probably already answered a bit of what your question entails, but how it changed my outlook on life tremendously. I mean, actually not tremendously, but definitely opened up my want and search for stories that focus on this type of kind of struggle or issue in a very authentic way. It's helped me reflect on certain aspects. Did it change my point of view on others? I don't necessarily think so. I like to think that I'm a very open-minded person. I don't really care all too much of what other people do or want to be or how they move, as long as it's not disrespectful, as long as it's not obnoxious or disgusting or creepy or anything like that. I feel like people can kind of be and do whatever they want. Obviously within certain parameters, but those parameters are massive. That is their business, and I'm going to be supportive of whatever choices they make. But that's not to say that I would support someone that's like a creep or like a flat out racist or something like that. That's just weird. Like, why? Like, I don't really understand like how progressive today's society is, and you can still be kind of like a flat out racist. Like, you can still hate specific genders or people, and it kind of boils down to why. How do you have this hatred, this innate hatred for people that you do not know? Doesn't that become tiring? I'm sure you could equate that to many other things, but I'm also the type of person that just doesn't really care all too much. Like, why would I care about hating someone or hating this or hating that? It just sounds tiring. I'm already tired enough. I don't want to hate anyone. I don't want to hate anything, really. I guess that comes down to like your location, how you're raised, your parents, your emotions, what you've been through, and there is some leniency towards people's situations and scenarios. So I don't think a story has kind of changed my perception. I think my perception's pretty open. But I am glad you saved the best question for last. Soft or hard cookies? Honestly, why is it such a hard question? Because I'm from Australia, hard cookies are, I want to say, like the standard, because the Anzac cookies are hard. I don't know if people know what Anzac cookies are, but it's like a hard biscuit or a hard cookie, and it's really nice. Like, you can get, they're actually very addicting. Growing up in school, you could get like really soft cookies. I want to say hard cookies, to be honest. I like both, but I would say hard cookies, just because Anzac biscuits are like untouchable. I don't think like another cookie could be able to beat that. Also, the ASMR stuff, maybe. I think this is kind of equivalent to ASMR. Maybe not be like vocally ASMR, but it might be enough. Keep me posted or hounding me for that ASMR, and I might eventually crack and try something. It might be a segment in one of these videos, depending on the interest for it. You'll hear that bird in the background? Jesus, it's loud. Talk about cancelled series. Phantom Seer, I Tell C, that one manga we can't talk about. Yeah, we don't mention that one. We love you too. Thank you, I love you. I think cancel series are pretty normal. I don't know if there's really like a series that has been axed that I've been like deeply disappointed in. Like, I enjoyed Phantom Seer, and in comparison to a lot of other works that were out at the time, I thought it would stay alive, but I got axed pretty quickly in comparison to some other works that are actually doing worse than it. But they have their reasoning, they have the statistics that we don't, so it's only kind of hypothetical from our point of view. I Tell C, I think I read the first chapter of I Tell C, just wasn't for me. But that one manga that we can't talk about, I think that definitely is the most disappointing one. That series was so beautifully done, and I feel like I can't even say that without like kind of cringing a little bit, without like my skin kind of like tightening up, because that's complimenting the author that wrote it. And I feel really bad for the artist, because the art was beautiful. The art was gorgeous. I hope she's able to work on other series, which I do think she is, because I would love to see her art within any manga, especially back in Weekly Shonen Jump, because that was definitely some very gorgeous work. But definitely that series is a heartbreaking one. That one hit different. I think a lot of people were very disappointed, and honestly I can't even compliment it as much as I can anymore, because it's like complimenting the author's ability to write engaging stories, especially with a female lead. That's so weird to me. Like, why be a creep? Why be a sicko? Why not get enough prison time? What is wrong with the justice system over there? I understand different culture, different perception of things, right? Normal, standard, but my god, quite literally just a slap on the wrist for doing the very sickening and creepy things that he was doing. I digress. That was a loss, and I'm willing to take that loss knowing that that author is like that. Should definitely talk about some interesting things like the popularity of webtoons getting bigger by the year, or will it ever be on the same level as manga now? You're not wrong, this is a great topic. From my understanding of webtoon, the moniker that is webtoon is American in itself, or English, sorry. But I do think it stems from America, right? It's an American company or organization that is webtoon. Or the series that is posted underneath it is of Korean, Chinese, Japanese, or just Asian, usually culturally influenced, right? It's the manga and manhwas of the Asian culture kind of falling underneath the webtoon umbrella. And a lot of them have got really popular. I think the great thing about the webtoon site in itself is that you can see a lot of the viewership, a lot of the statistics, and you can see some of these series are just massive. Like they're already competing, if not overshadowing the manga industry, or at least some of the newer series, right? Because we don't see those digital statistics. We see the sales and the volume success, right? But we don't see the amount of people reading it, which understandable because the manga industry within Japan is still very physical. It's a weekly magazine, they rely on volume sales, and it's slowly starting to shift to digital with Jump Plus and Manga Plus, for example, and series only specifically being digital. Like they release weekly digital, not within a weekly magazine. And they make that success or that profit not only off the site and going there and reading it, because ads, etc., but also the volume sales. I don't think webcomics have the volume sales. I don't think they sell volumes like that. And that's just focusing on webtoons, like not the ones that are called manhwas, which are away from the webtoon umbrella, whether they be self-published or they're published within a manga-driven site, but just the webtoons. I don't think there's volumes for them. I could be wrong, but I don't think I've ever seen like a Sweet Home physical volume. If they had physical print, so people could collect the series, so you would read it week by week, month by month, digitally only on the webtoon app, and then when there was enough chapters or whatever out, they put it within a volume and they sell it so people can buy it. I think that would be a great way to kind of at least compete with the manga industry, because guarantee if Sweet Home sold like physical volumes for the whole series, that stuff would be gone in like seconds. That's a very popular story. Not to mention it's got this really beautiful blend of different countries kind of working together. As much as a lot of it comes from Asian culture and how they treat their comics or their mangas, whatever it may be, there's also people from a litany of different countries competing and kind of warring with each other in a very competitive way. And you have very popular series from all across the globe made by very talented people, have the same focus or subject of storytelling, but in their own creative way. And I think that's the best thing about webtoon, is that it's kind of this blend of American comics with the Japanese kind of storytelling style and an evolution of it. It's probably wrong to say even Japanese, but basically the origin of manga within Japan and how long it's been around. We take that with Korea and China and other Asian places with how they build their comics, which are very similar, I believe, kind of morph them all together, give it this American kind of comic book spin or flair to it and the creative freedom that you have, and you have webtoons. I think that's kind of the beauty of it. So many different series, and each of them are going to be artistically so different from one another, which is probably the most alluring thing. Given time and enough attention and enough business and just like a different approach, I believe, to their marketing and how they want to sell and maximize profits in a very respectful way, webtoons could easily compete with the manga industry, I think. I think the problem they face is that they don't have the ease of access of animation industry, which a lot of the popularity comes from. Because let's say Sweet Home got an anime that was as incredible as Kaizen's, that would be very popular, but they have nothing to sell. They don't have the physical volumes to kind of reap that success or that profit that this massive influx of people want to show support to. They can read it though, which is money in itself. I will say the webtoons have access to more of like the bigger entertainment industry, like movies and TV shows, but it's still very rare because Sweet Home did have a TV show on Netflix, I believe, and that was really well received. I do believe a lot of webtoons go to K-dramas or Korean studios or entertainment industry, as well as China and Japan, so kind of breaching the global demographic, and America's a great place for it, or the UK, or just like a large population of English-speaking countries. That's like where a lot of bigger money and big entertainment is as well. Like when manga volumes are selling out within English-speaking countries, that's when you know you've made it. That's when you know it's popular. Them selling out in Japan Japan is one thing, that's impressive in itself, but selling out in foreign countries that just love the industry in itself, just love the medium, it's a very nice thing to see. So hopefully Webtoons can kind of pick up that global success one day, and I don't think it's very far off. There's a lot of amazing stories out there. It just needs that extra push or emphasis to kind of get that marketing out there. Moving on, thoughts on Shigaraki. I have no thoughts on Shigaraki just because I am not caught up to My Hero. I do plan on reading it again fully because I forget everything that happens within it, but I've seen a lot of great things from the recent stuff of My Hero. I think I stopped reading around about the overhaul stuff. I think I finished the overhaul stuff actually, and then I put it down and I never unfortunately got back to it. So hopefully I'll pick it up soon. I may even make a video on it and kind of indulge with a lot of the incredible things that are happening. So to be honest, I've kind of just been scrolling for like a couple of minutes. There's a lot of interesting questions, stuff that is kind of more akin to like what I plan to do with this podcast, which isn't a podcast. Guests that I'm probably never going to have because of what I mentioned before, just time scheduling and me being busy, and kind of just want to keep this to myself per se. I don't want to rush it, nor do I want to rush other people, but I could understand why people would want to guess because it's definitely more entertaining. So the last question I'm going to leave this on is for the gamers. Right? Games. What am I excited for? How do I feel about Dying Light 2? What a great place to end this off, because Dying Light 2 I am very excited for. I've been waiting for that game for so long because the first one was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And I'm not even that crazy on zombies. I don't really care for them, but parkour within video games or free running within video games is just beautiful. Just movement in general within games is just beautiful. So I'm very excited for Dying Light 2. I am even more excited for the brand new Battlefield because that is like what I grew up with. That is every competitive shooter I played ever. It's what I spent the most time with. I'm currently playing Battlefield 5, as much as that is kind of giving me a headache to do because it does have its problems. I'm doing my best to bide my time till the brand new Battlefield. I tried playing Battlefield 3 about a month ago, and it's kind of difficult to find games in Australia because we don't really have too many server options, and it's just super unoptimized on the Series X. You would think it runs well, which it kind of does run well, but it just, the technical side of it, hit detection, bullet register, all that stuff, just very odd. There's a lot of screen tearing just kind of all over the place. I'm not entirely sure why. I wish they'd run like a little update or a patch for it, but obviously it's a very old game, so that's understandable at least. And so I thought I would go to Battlefield 5 at least because the newest one, as much as that does have a lot of its problems, it is making me very excited for the brand new Battlefield as well. So Halo Infinite, another game I'm looking forward to. I'm not like a crazy Halo fan, but I am excited to try it and just get into it again, and it seems like they're doing a lot of great things with it. Free to play multiplayer, amazing. I'm trying to think like what other games are coming out at the end of the year, which I can't remember. I think it's just those three that I'm super excited for, to be honest, because Battlefield will keep me busy for a very long time. That comes out in October. Dying Light is December, and then Halo is what I assume going to be November or December. There's no release date for that, so I guess we'll find out soon. Speaking of games, I have always wanted to kind of do like gameplay stuff, not on this channel, but like create a whole separate channel just specifically for gameplay and just playing through different games. I felt very inspired by Mythimu, just watching his content every day and just like the fun he has for games, his love for the roguelikes, the Metroidvanias, the Souls-like and whatnot. Felt very inspired to kind of maybe one day create a separate channel just specifically for different games and just playing specific things. Not like a walkthrough channel, but something a little bit more loose and more personality entertaining driven, if that makes sense, because I don't have much of a personality on my channel with the more analytical stuff, the discussions or the critiques, reviews, whatever you want to consider them. I think that can reflect a little bit differently in the gameplay stuff, and I can play around a little bit more with humor and comedy. I've always thought about it. It's a big step to kind of try and do it because I don't have the material to be able to do it in terms of a capture card, because the 4K 60 frame capture cards are like $700, and while I could definitely just buy one right now, I hate spending money for no reason. You know what I mean? I hate spending money and not, I have like that guilt, buyer's guilt. I have that, and not get the usage out of it. I'm gonna be disappointed in myself. Like, I really just bought this where I could have bought food over the next 6 months. Hey Elgato, if you're watching this, send me one of your new 4K 60 capture things for the Series X, because I can't justify buying one unless a lot of people want to see me play games and I don't have to feel horrible about a purchase. Thank you. With all of this being said, welcome to the end of the video, the end of the podcast that isn't a podcast. Hopefully it was enjoyable, at least. Maybe you're asleep currently. Good night. I hope you have a good rest. Maybe you're waking up from your nap. Good morning. Hello. Good afternoon. Hope you're doing well. Hope you slept well. Make sure to drink plenty of water. Make sure to wash your face. Unless you have sensitive skin, then I don't recommend doing that, but do what you can, what you feel comfortable with. This has been an enjoyable time for myself. I actually enjoyed doing this, so if you did too, and you would like to see more of these, maybe once a week, and you want to see me talk about specific things that maybe are a little bit more relevant, more recent things, manga, anime, games, real world stuff, myself, anything really, let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a good day, good night, a good rest, whatever it may be, whatever you're doing. Drink plenty of water, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I greatly appreciate it. Depending on when this video is, new video every 3 days, maybe, but I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.